It's my pleasure to introduce Willie Whittlesey, who's the general manager at the Yuba Water Agency. Willie and I met or got to know each other quite well, I would say, through the Water Solutions Network, which brought together mid-career professionals working on water issues across the state of California. And we spent a lot of time together during that year and talked about all of the different ways that we should be working more closely together. And frankly, I'm always impressed by Willie's vision and the fact that he's grounded in practicality and actually doing things. So it's a great pleasure to have you here, Willie. Thanks so much for taking your time today to be with us. Take it away.
Excellent, Carrie. Thank you so much. Carrie and I knew each other, but then got to know each other even more on a professional level. I think it was 3 years ago in the Water Solutions Network. It's been fun ever since. And Carrie has a wonderful vision as well. And I look forward to working with the Sierra Fund long-term to get more work done on the ground. Okay, so Carrie asked me to speak today about forest restoration and mine remediation or abandoned mine remediation. And I can't really get into all of it without kind of just letting you know how it's all gone down here at Yuba Water Agency the past, let's say, 4 or 5 years. Like I said, I have to talk a little bit about forest restoration, then I'll get into abandoned mine remediation and how we are involved and like to be more involved. About 4 years ago, Blue Forest Conservation came to us and said, hey, we've got this economic model on how we can help fund some of the work on the national forest. One of the projects is in your watershed. Would you be willing to participate? And it took us a year to figure out what the heck they were doing, what they were talking about. But the reality is it is a financial model that really worked to fund projects on the ground. But better yet, it pulled together entities that don't necessarily not work together, but it pulled us together to work in a way that we never had before. And that's primarily Blue Forest. They kind of led it, and then the Tahoe National Forest and CAL FIRE and Yuba Water Agency. And so we got together and we started. Can you guys see my cursor here in the northeast portion of the map, the green portion? That's the Yuba project. We got together to implement this 15,000 acre project. It's 7,500 acres of treatment, but there's a 15,000 acre benefit area. And it's primarily forest thinning. There's some aspen enhancement and meadow restoration and road work associated with it. But this was a project that was on the books at the Forest Service, and it was really just ready to be implemented. They just didn't have funding. And Yuba Water Agency stepped in and said, we were asked to participate at, I think, a 20% contribution level. So we did. And we did that through the Blue Forest Conservation's Forest Resilience Bond. And we were thinking that this is like one step in treating kind of the entire Yuba watershed. And we knew it was going to take years, and we knew it was going to take a lot of collaboration, but we said, we got to start somewhere. So we invested in it. It's our investment was $300,000 a year over 5 years. I think we've gotten 3 years of field work done. I think we have 2 to go. And I was thinking, okay, when that's done, we'll probably sit down and talk about the next project. Well, that happened faster than I thought. It wasn't, I think we signed that agreement in the fall of 2018. I think we were in a room in the spring of 2019 talking with all of these folks over here on the right of my screen about, and more, but these are the folks that signed an MOU, about what's next. You know, we got the Yuba project going, it's 15,000 acres, but we need to think on a pace and scale that's watershed wide. And someone, might have been me, I don't remember, someone raised their hand and said, well, we should think about like the entire watershed. And I'm like, well, yeah, let's talk about treating the entire North Yuba watershed upstream of our reservoir. And I was thinking that was a long shot, right? Like they're not, I mean, that's a huge bite to take, right? But everyone agreed, and we agreed that it's going to take 20 years. So we signed an MOU with all these folks on the right here to begin the treatment of the entire North Yuba watershed upstream of Bullard's Bar. And we had a kind of a 20-year target to get most of the area treated, or the treatable areas. That's how we got involved in forest management or forest restoration. We've done some other projects in the kind of the urban forest land interface in kind of the foothills of Yuba County, and we got CAL FIRE Healthy Forest grants to get those done. Similar treatments, just different landowners, private landowners, timber companies, small timber farms. But basically the same thing. There's too many trees per acre. We need to reduce the vegetation per acre and make it fire resilient. And a lot of this work is just getting a lot of traction, obviously, because we've had so many catastrophic wildfires. So kind of we're in with the forest management side of this, we're in a race against time, right? I mean, it's only a matter of time where and I know you all are, most of you are probably in Nevada County, I'm here in Yuba County, but it's all, the fires don't know the difference. Here's an example of how we're in a race against time. This is the North Complex here. It burned in the Feather River watershed. It burned over 300,000 acres in a matter of a few weeks, right? This was just last year. It was 4.5 miles away from our watershed, or the planning area we're working on. That easily could have been our watershed burning the same amount, the same intensity in the same amount of time. It's just a matter of time when it burns. And so the question is, well, what's Yuba Water Agency's interest in managing forest restoration or helping with forest restoration? Well, primarily, we care about the quality and quantity of water, and we have a holistic view of how water is managed. The Sierra Nevadas are the source of our water, and they're not just the source. The soil, the snowpack, it's all a reservoir for us. It's where our water comes from, and we care about the health of that water. We care about the quality of that water that's coming out, and of course the quantity of water. And that was one of the things that the folks at UC Merced and Roger Bales and his team are looking at, is how has this overstocked or overdense forest impacted the natural water cycle, or the natural regime of the water, hitting the ground in the form of snow or rain, and then making its way through the soil, into the aquifers, and into the streams and rivers that flow into our reservoir. So that's one thing we're working on, is the quantity of water. But then we talk about the quality of water. And when you look at fires like the Camp Fire in Paradise from 2018, and you look at the pictures there, and all the houses and the cars, and the man-made materials that burn up, there's also contaminants. What are the contaminants that get into the water? And if we can get our forests back to a healthy, more resilient state, fires will be less intense, consume less acreage, and hopefully we can protect these man-made features and eliminate this toxic runoff. So that's another reason we're involved. But primarily, and a direct benefit to us, is we have to manage the surface of our reservoir for recreation. So here's a picture of New Bullard's Bar, and what you see there is just a bunch of logs and debris on the surface of the reservoir. And our management target, is to have the reservoir free of most of this material by Memorial Day every year, so that the reservoir can be used by boaters and water skiers and fishermen, and it's safe to use. This is a picture that happened after the winter of 2017, which was a record year for inflow through the Yuba watershed. And we haven't experienced a catastrophic wildfire upstream of our reservoir prior to this. We haven't yet. Like I mentioned, it's a race against time. But this is the amount of forest debris that comes off of a relatively healthy forest, or a forest that hasn't experienced catastrophic wildfire. So we sit back when Blue Forest asked us to participate and go, imagine what 2017 would have looked like on the surface of our reservoir if we did experience a major wildfire. Let's just say a small major wildfire, like 25,000 or 50,000 acres, which is small these days. What would this surface of our reservoir look like there? We spent $1 million in 2017 cleaning this debris up. So we're sitting back thinking, okay, if we can get over the next 20 years, if we can get the forest in a good condition where we wouldn't see this input of woody debris onto our reservoir, it would be a direct financial benefit to Yuba Water Agency. So I know Carrie told me I have 15 minutes. I'm trying to zip through the forest part so I can get to the sediment part. That's really how we justified participating in forest restoration. One, it's good for the water quality and quantity, and two, we have a direct problem, or a direct financial cost, of just keeping our reservoir clean. So then let's move on to sedimentation. This is a picture of our house diversion dam. It's on the Middle Yuba River. It's downstream of many hydraulic mines, and it seems that every 5 to 10 years, after significant water years like 2017, we see major inputs of sands and gravels and cobbles into this diversion dam. And we had permits in place to allow the passage of this material through our dam, so that we can maintain like a natural level of sediment deposition downstream for habitat. But we had so much material come in so fast in 2017. We had our low level outlet open. It was ready to pass sediment according to all the permits and the planning we went through. And it just got clogged with limbs and tops and sticks and debris, and then got sediment backed up against it. And I don't know how much material we moved through. I don't think it was very much. I think it got plugged up rather quickly. And then what happens is that sediment just continues to build in the reservoir throughout that winter period once it's dislodged upstream. We spent $4 million cleaning out this reservoir after the 2017 storms. So our interest in abandoned mine remediation is to hopefully stabilize these man-made causes of sediment and debris, right? We all know that hydraulic mines are basically scars that are left on in our watershed, and they're not stabilized, and they're really unnatural. I mean, sedimentation, we all know, is a natural phenomenon, but not on a scale we see in the Yuba watershed. There's so many hundreds of acres of abandoned hydraulic mines that they're just, you know, I'd rather have a better term, but they're like a bleeding sore that's constantly depositing or allowing sediment to dislodge from these areas, make its way into the rivers and streams, and then impact our downstream reservoirs. So when Carrie started talking about, you know, how we could work together to remediate these mines, he basically asked me, you know, would you be interested in what's your interest? You know, why would you care? Here is the primary reason. It's to try and stabilize those hydraulic mines so that we don't see the sediment and debris in our reservoirs. And this is just on the scale of things, a small impoundment where we divert water into Bullard's Bar Reservoir. And so here we're not as worried about the volume of water we can store. We're just worried about making sure we can pass water into Bullard's Bar. But in our larger reservoir, Bullard's Bar, we do care about, you know, sediment buildup long-term and how much reservoir capacity is that taking away. And like the forest, we'd like to get the, you know, all of our watershed in a more natural state that existed prior to, you know, in the forest world, prior to wildfire exclusion, and in this case, prior to hydraulic mining. You know, the condition that our land existed in like, let's say 1850, before we went crazy and started blasting the hillsides away. So I know that Carrie and I have been working the last couple of years together. We do have one grant where the Sierra Fund's assisting Yuba Water Agency in planning for mine remediation. And overall, our goal as a water agency is to stabilize these mines for the purposes I just explained. And that's what Sierra Fund and that's what Carrie have been doing. And Carrie is going to know the details about all the work she's doing. I don't really have those on the top of off the top of my head, but I know it's good work. I know we're going to be able to couple the forest health work and the mine remediation work together in projects in the future. They're a little bit disconnected right now because there's so much action being taken and so much funding available for forest restoration because of the catastrophic wildfires we've seen over the past several years. But in my mind, we should put these two projects together. In any area we treat for forest restoration that's in or around hydraulic mines or abandoned hydraulic mines, we should do the mine remediation at the same time, if at all possible, and use the same pool of funds to get that paid for. So to conclude, Yuba Water Agency definitely has an interest in remediating these abandoned mines, and we look forward to doing it. And I'm sure there's other ways that we can help. I think we're just scratching the surface on what we've done and what we can do. But that's really a summary of Yuba Water Agency's role here, and we're willing and ready to work with others to make this happen.